and welcome to this Championship Chatter spin-off, where we'll be looking at picking an England 11 using only Championship players. I'm joined by Des Oldham, Nottingham Forrest fan. Des, how you doing, pal?
I'm good, thank you. Looking forward to getting stuck into this healthy debate.
We're also joined by Alex. He's a Barnsley fan. A bit of a South Yorkshire connection here, so hopefully he'll be picking some United players like I will be.
Yeah, nice to be on. Thank you for having me.
Not a problem at all. So what we're going to do, for those watching, we're going to do it position by position. I'll go over the rules first. It's got to be a 3-5-2. They can't have been capped by any other country at senior level. And the manager we pick has also got to be English. If we name a position and more than one of us say the same player, that player automatically gets the position. If not, it goes to a vote at the end and you can't vote for your own player. So we'll see how that goes. So let's start off. Easy place. Let's start in the net and we're going to Des.
Well, I'm going to go for Sam Johnstone. I think he's when you look around the English goalkeepers in the Championship, he's obviously got. He's been selected in the England squad before. He's got experience. He's playing at a team who have played in the Premier League recently. He's got Premiership experience as well. He's a good goalkeeper. He's not as good as I think people say he is sometimes. I think there's other goalkeepers in the Championship, unfortunately not English, that are better.
Yeah.
But when you look at what's available for selection, I'd definitely start out by going for Johnstone.
I do like Johnson. I'll come to Alex's opinion on Johnson in a second. But my only issue with Johnson is he's a bit like Pickford in the sense that he's very hyper-aggressive, isn't he? I think that he can bring out a lot of calamities in defence on that shouting aspect to him. Other than that, he's a solid shout, good shot stopper, good at coming out and getting the ball. And on the positive side of shouting at your defence, he does command them quite well. Alex, what's your thoughts on Johnson?
Well, I said the same. I've said Sam Johnstone in net. Like Des said, been in England setup before. He was in this current squad actually, but he withdrawn for injury. I had a few other players in my head: Foderingham, Lee Nichols, Daniel Bentley, all good players. But I think I've got to go with Sam Johnstone purely because he's been in England setup and Southgate seems to like him.
See, I'd gone for League One Wes. Obviously, there's no other keeper in the division in better form at the minute. But if we're going long term, I did overlook Johnstone, if I'm honest with you. Good player, and I've been outvoted, so I'll have to eat some humble pie now. But no, it is a good shout for it. There are some other good players in there. I do think that a lot of the better English keepers do end up getting called to the Premier League, even if they're not starters, which is a bit of a problem, isn't it?
There's the guy at Stoke as well, the youngster, Burslick. Looks a decent shout and a prospect going forward. And I'm not sure I'm not sure Stoke know who their number one is at the moment, but he played at Forrest recently and he did well, although he did have a clanger as well. But throughout, he commanded his area. That's going to happen with goalkeepers, isn't it? So that's somebody to look out for.
I mean, my biggest problem with English goalkeepers is you've got people like Dean Henderson, fantastic keeper, sat on a bench. You've got Fraser Forster, who disappeared for years upon end. It's a really, really oversaturated market for goalkeepers, for good goalkeepers. So the English ones seem to take second fiddle. And same in the Championship, really. There's one or two standouts, and then the rest of them, it's an influx of foreign keepers, isn't it?
Well, it used to be, didn't it, that the rest of the world wanted an English goalkeeper almost.
Yeah.
And now that's almost fullbacks, which I'm sure we'll come on to. It's the sought after English player, but now, like you say, the international keepers seem to take priority.
So we've got our goalkeeper, and it is Sam Johnstone of West Bromwich Albion. Let's move on to what we've just talked about, which is fullbacks, and we're going to take it onto the left side first, and we'll start with Alex.
I've gone for Max Lowe. There's a lot of Sheffield United players who I could have picked in this lineup. I was realising that when I was writing my notes. But he's already represented England at youth level, I think under 18s, under 20s. So he knows the setup, and I think he's a great player. But I'm also thinking about Ryan Giles on loan at Blackburn. Really good young player. He's been on loan at Coventry, Rotherham, Cardiff as well, I think. I like the look of him, but I've picked Max Lowe.
See, Des is really going to disagree with me on this one. I won't let Max Lowe defend anything. I'd retrain him as a midfielder as soon as I possibly could, because defending, I just didn't trust him. Going forward, good player. I've gone for Joe Bryan. bit of an obvious choice, but I just think that experience, if we're picking an England 11, that long-term experience would fit in a back five, especially. There are a lot of young English fullbacks, aren't there, when you look at it? Not many experienced ones. But I think I may already know I've been outvoted again, unless Des surprises me. Go on, Des.
I'm going to surprise you. I'd go for Jed Wallace as well.
Oh, bloody hell.
I do like Maxwell, and he's obviously had a bit of a resurgence at Forrest. He's got his career back on track. It seems to be going in the right direction. He's very consistent, Maxwell, but like you say, he's probably that little bit better going forward than he is defensively. So I think Joe Bryan in the formation and sort of what Fulham are doing this year, and picking players who are on top form. The one thing with Lowe, he's slightly injury prone as well.
Yeah.
So he's making a massive difference to Forrest when he's not there. But I think if you're looking at the slightly better player, I'd go for Joe Bryan.
So there we are.
You know what, as well?
Go on, Alex.
You know what? I think Callum Styles would be a good shout, but he's obviously recently changed to Hungarian. Really good young player. Opposition fans seem to rate him really highly as well, but
he was my choice.
Now.
He was my choice.
Was it?
Yeah,
wow.
He was. Then I went on transfer market, and there it is. Hungarian are like, with him, that it's like Britain Diaz.
I know.
Blackburn.
It is, yeah. I think he's the only Barnsley player that we could consider to be in this lineup. I tried thinking about Brad Collins, but you can't. So Styles really good player, but can't have him in this lineup because he's not English now. He's Hungarian.
We can have him as a reserve. Well, we'll put that up.
I'm sure if England come calling in the future, he'll want to be in the team, but no, he's doing well. So
has he played for the Hungarian senior team then?
Yeah, well, he's only recently changed actually, literally in the past week or so, and he made his debut the other night. I think he only came on and sort of 10-15 minutes, but their fans seem to love him. We love him, so it's a win-win situation, really.
Looking at Britain Diaz and looking at him, do we seem to find that a lot of younger English players who kind of have a bit of a confidence step where if I don't play for Man U, if I don't play for Chelsea, or if I don't play for one of those top 10 teams, I'm not going to get in the England squad? Are we going to see a lot more players looking and checking the backgrounds, do you think?
I think so, yeah, definitely. I mean, we've seen, like you mentioned, Brereton Diaz and Callum Styles this season. It's two players in a really short space of time, so I think we might see it again in the future.
Like yourself, Des, do you think there's going to be an exodus of England players going to other countries?
I do, and we touched on the fullbacks. Matty Cash is another one who Forrest, of course, and now he plays for Poland. That's been happening for 2 or 3 years. So I think what they do is almost sort of check in, find out whether they're ever going to be considered. We touched on the fullback situation, especially England have got, it seems like hundreds of right backs to choose from for the first team. So Cash has kind of just gone for my own career. And I know it's been happening for 2 or 3 years because there was talk of it when he was at Forest. So that they'll look and go, well, to get an international career on the board, I may as well go and play for someone else.
That caveat's quite nicely into our right back position. As you've said, we've got a wealth of right backs. So this player, I could probably only just put him in, and that's George Baldock at right back, because he could play for Greece at any moment. Because I don't think there's any chance now of him overtaking your Trent Alexander-Arnolds and all your other right-back players there. So he could be another one who heads off to another country. But as of right now, George Baldock is English, not Greek, and he's my choice for right-back. We're going to Des. Who's your choice?
I don't think you need... This is the one where I'm insisting. Jed Spence. Jed Spence is a phenomenal player. We can't believe how lucky we are that Middlesbrough let him come to us on loan. We're now feeling a bit sad for ourselves because they're going to sell him for 15, 20 million. And it looks like he's going to skip, as I mentioned, Matt Cash. Matt Cash went to that mid-level team in the Premiership, Aston Villa. It looks like Spencer's going to go that step higher and perhaps go on to a top team, a Tottenham or Arsenal, Bayern Munich, all these teams. Lots of foreign teams after him, like we say, that they sought after. They're looking at these fullbacks, English fullbacks, and thinking this is the way forward. So what Jed Spence does, again, he's not perfect defensively, but going forward, he just adds a completely different dynamic to Forest team this year and to any team I think he'd play in. He's got goals in him, he's got assists. and his pace is just unbelievable. He could almost play as a right winger, and I think at times he does play as a right winger, which puts Forrest on the front foot. His impact in the team has been incredible. So for me, it's got to be Jed Spence.
Controversial now, Alex. You could either send it to a 3-way vote, or are you going to pick one of ours?
Well, I'm not agreeing. I mean, both of those, Baldock and Jed Spence, great shouts, and I won't complain at any of those being in. But I've gone for Sorba Thomas at Huddersfield, purely because of what I've heard from Huddersfield fans. Came from non-league, progression's been insane, and I just think he's a really quick, upcoming, and fantastic player. So, gone for Sorba Thomas.
So we're
very interesting shout.
That is an interesting shout, but I can see the positives for him, especially when we've played Huddersfield this season. That brings it down to his first 3-way vote. Remember, you cannot vote for your own player. Oh, no. I don't know who to pick now. I'm going to go for Dez's choice. I'm going to go for Spence. I just think he's had a bit more maturity to his game than what the Huddersfield lad has at this point in time, despite the age difference. Des, who are you going to pick? Is it Baldock or is it the lad from Huddersfield?
I'd go with the lad from Huddersfield. My second pick was the guy at Middlesbrough.
Yeah.
Name escapes me at the second, but another fantastic prospect. And the reason we've got Spence, but I'd go for the lad at Huddersfield. I've seen Baldock a few times and I've never been too keen. Obviously, you see him a lot more than I do, but he's been about a long time now and never really made an impression. So I'd go for the chap at Middlesbrough. Huddersfield, sorry.
Deciding vote, Ali.
You know what? I'm going to say Jed Spence. I do agree with that shout. A lot of Prem teams are after him. A lot of sort of big foreign teams are after him. Like Des mentioned, really good at attacking, got a few goals in him, so you can't complain at him being in the side, I don't think. But Baldock is also a very good shout. I'm not counting that one out. Not saying that's a bad decision, but I've got to go with Jed Spence. Yeah,
like I mentioned before, I think the difference between him and a lot of other players at his age is he doesn't seem to have a maturity to him, doesn't he? He's got a good football brain, and while he's not the finished article yet, how he plays out on loan from the club is showing how much of an asset he could be for many a lot of big teams to come forward. And I wouldn't be too disappointed to see him in the England setup.
Yeah, it reminds me of someone like Jude Bellingham, a young player with sort of a lot of maturity, and a lot of big teams are after him. So big future ahead of him, and I can see him being in the England setup in the future. So we'll have to wait and see on that one. But done really well this season, and I think he'll get a good move in the future.
Well, what was interesting, he played for the under-21s on Friday, and there's a Southampton fullback called Livramento in front of him.
Yeah.
And I know I've not seen much of him, but when I've seen him, he's not looked that comfortable.
No.
And I thought Spence was sat on the bench. I was waiting for Spence to come on, obviously, want the Forest players to come into the game. And I thought, Spence is miles better than this guy. He's just never been in the squad. And I thought he's got to surpass him at some point. So again, it's interesting. Again, there's lots of fullbacks to choose from, isn't there?
Yeah. That decides his left and right backs. That's Brian, and that is Spence. We'll move into the 3 centre halves. We'll start on the left centre half first, and I'm going to go first again. Massively biased. The right centre half. I should correct myself. Massively biased. I'm going to go for Chris Basham. I don't see another English centre half that plays in that specific position that's been better this season. And we'll go to Alex, who's definitely going to disagree with me.
Well, I'm not actually. I'm going to say Chris Basham as well. Yeah, I am. Out of my 3 centre-backs, Chris Basham was the first one I wrote down. He just seems a cut above the rest. I've watched him a few times this season, and I think he gets into the team. He's got to get into the team.
Yeah, he's considering he started out as a midfielder at some decent clubs whilst working at McDonald's as well. How far he seems to have come and found that centre-half position. I do think the way he carries the ball forward does add a lot to his game. Defensive-minded, it's a good thing he doesn't play in the centre on his own. He doesn't play in the middle on his own because he could get caught out. But when he's in a 3, it's the ideal situation for him. So, Des, it comes to yourself. You have already been outvoted, but plead your case anyway.
I would go for Joe Worrell.
Not a bad shout.
Joe Worrell has come on. He's already attracting attention from Premiership teams.
Yeah.
He's captained, I think it was the under-19 winners of the World Cup. And this season, he's just come on leaps and bounds. If you've seen the game against Liverpool last week, He was absolutely outstanding. He was man of the match. He did a real job on Firmino. Of course, not their best striker, but a very good striker.
Yeah.
And he's just added such a different dynamic to his game since Cooper's been in charge. He was a bit complacent at times, but I think Cooper's kind of reminded him of where he's at, who he is, and now he's such a composed player. He used to get caught out of position a little bit, but I think a Premiership move's in the waiting, and a big Premiership move as well. So my choice would definitely be Joe Worrell in that right side. Although he can be moved.
It can be moved. Keep him in reserve. If you don't like his choices for another one, you could put him in as a wild card at the end, because we're all going to have a wild card pick at the end. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go to the right-hand side. No, I've done it the wrong way around again. The left-hand side of that back three. I'm going to let Alex go first on this one. Would you left-handed centre-half be?
Well, I can't claim to have done the centre-backs sort of left, centre and right, but one of my centre-backs I've had is another Sheffield United player, and that's Ben Davies. You don't get signed by Liverpool if you're not a half-decent player.
Yeah.
Really good player at Preston, and didn't get a chance at Liverpool. I know he was only on loan at Sheffield United, but saw the last-minute winner he scored against Blackburn, I think it was, for you lot. But looks a really good player. I've heard big things from Preston fans, so I can see him having a big future ahead of him. Maybe not at Liverpool, but surely in the Championship is a top player.
I'm going to go to Des next for that left hand. I'm going to do this again. I'm going to go to Des next for that left centre half role. Who are you going for?
I totally agree. I totally agree with Ben Davies. I think again, for the reasons that were said, played for Liverpool. He's come down a level. He's looking the part again. I think that's the obvious choice in that position.
I'm going to surprise you both now, because he's not really played enough for me to pick him in that position. Because if we were going on just good players, I'd have gone for Jack O'Connell, because in that position he's the best left-handed defender in a centre half three in this division. You'd probably disagree with me, but I'd say, and lower half of the Premier League, there's just nobody better. Before he got injured, I saw him getting an England call up. He was that good, like a full cap for England. But unfortunately, he's not played for over a year, so I couldn't go for him. So I'd actually gone for Nathaniel Phillips at Bournemouth. But it looks like I've been outvoted on this one. And I've been outvoted for one of my own players, so I can't complain too much. I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? Because when you try and break it into a three, you've got to look more at defending and are they going to play together? So it's a strange one, because in an England setup, I think that's been our big problem, is we've not quite found that perfect back three, have we?
Absolutely not. I think that's the weakest point of the team, isn't it? And that's probably why Southgate goes with that formation.
Yeah.
Because there's a worry with certain players and the responsibility on the shoulders. The likes of Stones is obviously a good player, Harry Maguire, but they've got their issues, haven't they?
Yeah.
They've got the real issues, and it's like Southgate doesn't quite know. Kyle Walker quite often plays in the back three, which is a little bit of a surprise.
Well, we'll go to like the centre half, if you will, the rock, the kind of linchpin that goes in that middle. And we'll go to Des first on this one.
Well, this is where I thought, and again, it might just be slightly out of position, but this is where I would go for Nat Phillips as that commanding presence in the middle. I was tempted to go with Steve Cook. Steve Cook's been excellent, but I think there's a lot more presence about Nat Phillips. And again, the journey he's made to get to Bournemouth, he's come in, he's shored them up again as well. Since he's signed, they've been a different team again. They lost the way a little bit, and I think he slotted in. And I just think over a period of time, he will prove to be probably the best defender in that league.
Yeah.
So I think that could be a position with the other two in my mind where he'd fit in nicely.
About yourself, Alex, who do you see in that role?
Well, I agree with that shout. Nat Phillips is a very good shout, but I'm going with Gary Cahill, a bit of a different one. I just think he's got bags of experience. I think he's a player you want in your team to just be amongst the younger players and to help them on. So I've gone with Gary Cahill.
Where's he actually playing now? You know, he's one of them players who he's around all this time.
Yeah.
And you'd figure he's there because he's become part of furniture, hasn't he?
He's playing at Bournemouth, I'm pretty sure. I remember seeing him
at Bournemouth.
I can't claim to know, to be honest, but
No, it is. It just. I thought about Cahill, but I just thought his career is kind of sort of slipping away from him a little bit, isn't it? He was at Chelsea. He was playing for England. He was at Chelsea. He went to Palace. It didn't work out. He's gone to Bournemouth. There's other players around him as well. So, through experience, I totally agree. Yeah. But I think Phillips is probably just creeped ahead of him.
You see, I'd forgot you were there. That's throwing a spanner in my works now. Like a big spanner in my works. Because I want to go for Daniel Fry at Borough. Oh, but I've completely forgot Gary Cahill was down here. That's
you know what, though? I think if Gary Cahill isn't in the starting 11, I think he has to be in the team somewhere just for the experience. But Nat Phillips is a really good shout, and I was torn between sort of Nat Phillips and some of the other centre backs I've picked. So you can't disagree with Nat Phillips.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm going to discard Daniel Fry. I am going to go for Nat Phillips. I'm going to pick Nat Phillips to put him in there. So Nat Phillips is our third centre half. But keep your Gary Cahill as a wild card at the end, because he could end up on the bench on the wild card. So let's move into midfield. And this is where I were really, really torn, because there's a lot of players that go into a good midfield. But do they go into a midfield three? And that's something we have a problem with at full England level, not just at picking championship players. So I'm going to start with, again, it's going to be a left, a centre, and a right, but you can put anybody there if you want. It's your pick. And I'm going to go again to Alex first on this one. And I'm going to go for the left-hand side.
I'm going Morgan Gibbs-White. I know you Sheffield United fans rate him really highly. I've got a few mates who are Sheffield United fans, and they just think he's the best thing since sliced bread. I think he's Prem quality, 100%. And I can't see him playing in the Championship next season, whether it's with you in the Premier League or at another Premier League club. I think he's got a very bright future ahead of him. He scored against Barnsley. I was at the game. Great composure. I think he's got to get into the team. Fantastic player. And like I said, I think he'll be in the Prem next season, no matter what.
Would you have him as a midfielder, though? That's the big question. Because I see more of it as a link-up player or a forward myself.
I've said left midfield, but yeah, sort of, he's definitely an attacking player.
Yeah,
so it could be a shout for sort of striker left wing, but no, I've gone for left midfield for this one.
Like yourself there, so have you gone for that left-hand side of the midfield?
Well, it's interesting. He mentions Morgan Gibbs-White. I've got him in the team, but not in that position.
Yeah.
So I would say Lewis Keempara from Hull. I think he's an exceptional talent. He played at Forrest this season, and he was incredible. Hull are poor in general. They don't offer very much.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they're not they'd be in a worse position if it weren't for points deductions. So I just think he's a standout player. He reminded me a lot of what's his name, the guy from West Ham who left Hull.
Oh yeah, Bowen.
Jared Bowen. He just reminded me a lot of him, but he was up and down the line. He's almost like the old-fashioned left-sided player. He can beat a man. He run all day, work back as well. So I think Keempara is going to. I think he'll be in the Premiership next season as well. I think somebody's going to come in and snap him up. If Forrest got promoted, I'd love him to sign for us.
He's a brilliant player, but he's not what I've gone for. I've gone for Tom Cantwell. Obviously, he's at Bournemouth currently. Natural left-handed sided player. Had some brilliant games, especially for Norwich. Come down to Bournemouth. Has he hit those same heights? Maybe not, but still flashes of brilliance. So that leaves us stumped again for a three-way vote. I'm going to vote first. I'm going to go for Keempara. I just think that, especially because I picked Gibbs-White in a different position, so I'm going to be a bit biased on that one. I've picked Keempara. I do think when we played Oli with their only bright spark in the entire squad. Just a brilliant player going forward and just creating a lot of problems. We're going to go for Alex. Who are you going for?
I'll go with Lewis Keempara as well. I did consider him, and I've seen him a few times this season. Really good player. I think I remember him scoring his first ever goal against Barnsley, actually, a few years back. And like Des mentioned, he probably will be in the Prem next season. Too good for Hull, really. And he's been a shining light in what has been a poor season for them.
Definitely. So that cements him in there. That's Keempara on the left-hand side of midfield. Look on the right. This one was I had a lot of problems. We're not exactly blessed in this position, especially in the Championship, for English players there. We'll go to Des first on this one.
So I've gone for, and I was quite surprised it was English actually when I was checking it out. I've gone for Jed Wallace.
Yeah.
And again, another exceptional player, almost like Keempara. You'd almost think one-man team.
Yeah.
You know, when Millwall don't have Wallace, they're a completely different outfit. When they've got him, they've got a player that does play off the wing, and another old-fashioned type winger, but he can also fit into other positions. Can play midfield, can play an attacking role, can play up front almost as well. Forrest will link with him heavily in January, so it's somebody I've followed his progress. He's always played well, and he's just one of those players, probably somewhere between the Premiership and the Championship. He's always going to be too good.
Yeah,
a bit like Mitrovic. He's always going to be too good for the team he's in. But I think he has such an impact on Millwall and on the games he plays in. Take set pieces as well. Another sort of. I was looking at some stats. He scored 6 goals and created 9 assists. So that's a good return because he's been injured for quite a while as well this season. So I think he's definitely somebody who's worth consideration.
Definitely. Just to let you know as well, we've got 9 minutes odd left on recording time. So I forgot to put a frigging thing on this now. So we'll rattle through them as quick as we can. Alex, who did you go for in this position?
I've gone for the same, Jed Wallace. I think he's been at Millwall a number of years and he's their best player. I can't disagree with anything Des has said. He's just hit the nail on the head, really. Jed Wallace, I think he's got to get into the team. He's a really good player and I think one of the best in the Championship, really, in his position.
Unanimous 3, because I picked Jed Wallace as well. There were just nobody there in that position that stood out as much as he did. Brilliant performer on the ball, consistently performs well. And a good head on his shoulders. I mean, you have to fit into a Millwall team, don't you?
Just another quick shout. Josh Bowler from Blackpool. Did a really good season. Played I think he came from Everton, so he kind of got Premiership club experience without getting in the first team. Looks like he's on his way back as well.
Yeah. He a good shout for the future as well, because he does look again like one of those players that's coming up the ranks. Not quite a finished article yet, which a lot of players may not be, but another diamond in the rough to keep an eye on him, isn't it?
Yeah.
Looking at that central position, I'll go first. I've had to go for Lewis Cook at Bournemouth. I just think if you're going to have 2 players either side that are quite creative, you need a bit of a gritty midfielder in the middle, don't you? And I think Lewis Cook kind of sums that position up. Good head on his shoulders, good career, played at quite a lot of different levels, and he's always been consistent. Maybe not the most glamorous player, but you don't always need glamorous players, do you? Sorry, go on.
Absolutely not. Initially, I looked at Ben Whiteman at Preston for that exact reason, almost like the Kelvin Phillips when he was in the Championship.
Yeah,
a player I think could go on, but just purely on some really impressive stats and the team he plays for, John Swift at Reading.
Yeah,
he's a really good player, and he's actually scored 11 goals and created 13 assists. And I think in the team he's playing in, which are really, really struggling, I think that's such a good return. And he is a good player. He's a very, very good midfield player. Perhaps not quite as workmanlike as the others. And like you say, in that formation, it might be an attacking lineup. but I'd go for Swift because I've seen him a few times and really liked him.
He's a good player, and again, he's one of those that can win you games, isn't he? And I think a lot of these players that we're looking at are game winners. And it's like you said, playing for Reading, they don't have many game winners, but to have one as good as he is always a good bonus to have in the bag. Alex, who have you gone for in that position?
John Swift again, like you said, match winner, someone who can change a game, turn it on its head, shining light in what has been a poor season for Reading, similar to Lewis Keempara at Hull. He's just a player in the team who has shone out and sort of been a good player in the team. Yes, I've gone with John Swift, but like Des mentioned, Ben Whiteman, he's a really good player. And I think when he was at Donny, I think Barnsley and Preston were the 2 teams after him. I wanted us to get him. I was really desperate for us to get him, but we didn't in the end. Preston got him.
You were after him when he were at us as a youngster. I remember Barnsley coming in for him a few times.
Yeah, I think he's a player who would just work well in our system. Not to speak too much about Barnsley, but we've got a lot of young players in midfield, and we need that experienced head to show the young players what to do. But no, I've gone with John Swift because I think he's a really good player. And if we were playing for someone like Fulham, just imagine the stats he'd get.
Oh,
he's
God,
getting
yeah.
these stats now in a team like Fulham. Unbelievable stats.
That Swift cemented in a 2-1. And to be honest with you, I can't argue it. Brilliant player, and he'll fit in really well there. I'm going to do strikers a bit differently because we're going to say both our strikers together rather than picking one or the other. And then maybe we can have a talk between us and maybe shift and chop them around. I'll start off. I'm going to go with Sharp and Gibbs-White and all Sheffield United front forward. But I just think you've got youth, talent, experience, and one of the Championship Mount Rushmore players. When you put them together, they've looked phenomenal all season. The only times they've really struggled is when Gibbs-White has dropped back into midfield. When they've played up front together, they've been phenomenal at times. I don't know if you both agree with me or if you've got other shouts that could possibly go in there. But a lot of the strikers in the Championship, your Mitrovic's, etc., not exactly useful for an England lineup, are they? We'll go to Alex first.
Well, this was the really sort of hard positions. I had a few names: Carlon Grant, Dominic Solanke. I didn't consider Gibbs-White because I put him in midfield, but obviously Billy Sharp as well. But I've gone with Carlon Grant and Dominic Solanke. I just think they're bad goals for fun in this team. You've got Billy Sharp, aging a bit, but he's a quality player. I think the best EFL's ever seen. So I would have gone playing at that. But the players I've gone for, Dominic Solanke and Carlon Grant.
By yourself, Des.
Well, I've gone for two of the players that have been mentioned already, and I was thinking sort of one in behind the other. I agree with yourself in Dominic Solanke. On Gibbs-White. I think when he's played in that role, he's been much more effective. He's been brilliant. I seen him actually earlier in the season for Wolves at Forrest in the League Cup, and he actually tore us apart that day. So really impressed with him. I think what he does in that role is so important for Billy Sharp. And whilst I was tempted with Billy Sharp, I've obviously seen him play at Forest as well. And as he gets older, he just becomes more and more intelligent. Yeah. He scored in both games this season against Forest, and he's barely had a kick. But he's so clever. He gets in the right position. I mentioned Worrell's positioning. He got on the shoulder of Worrell in the game at the City Ground, and he took one away from a ridiculous angle. And then he scored a couple of weeks ago for United. So there's always goals in Sharp, but I'd just be tempted to go for Solanke. I think, again, coming from that big club coming down, it's difficult. And I think he's finding his feet. Bournemouth again have come back, and I think a lot of that is down to him as well. You know, scoring goals. Yeah. He's got 23 goals this season, and he's also got 6 assists. So I think that's massive. Carlon Grant, I couldn't argue too much with. He looks like he's going to be a decent player. And just one other name to throw in. I've made my choices, but Willock at QPR is if you were looking for an alternative to Gibbs-White, he's got 7 goals and 11 assists. Yeah. I think those kind of numbers at this level are really impressive without anybody really standing out. Like Alex, it was quite tough with strikers, and normally you've got a myriad of strikers to choose from. But I'd definitely go with Gibbs-White playing off Dom Solanke. I think that a bit of youth, bit of sort of guile and skill. I think that'd cause a few teams a few problems.
So overall, then that's Solanke with 2 and Gibbs-White with 2. So that's his front 2. Gibbs and Solanke. So that weren't what I was expecting, but I can see the merits of it. Now comes to the interesting part before we get to the gaffer. You each get a wild card. You can pick one player of yours that you nominated that didn't go into the team, and you can stick him straight into the team and replace the democratically voted one. Just to throw it about a bit. We'll go to Des first. Which player would you stick straight in there?
Joe Worrell.
Joe Worrell.
I think his leadership skills alongside Phillips, I think, and alongside experience, like at Forest with Cook, I think he's just bringing more out of him. When he plays with experience, his leadership skills kind of come out as well, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And I think he's going to be in the Premier League in the next season or two, regardless of where Forest are at.
What about yourself, Alex? Who's your wild card?
Going to go with Gary Cahill. I mentioned him earlier. Like I said earlier, just really great player, lots of experience, and he's a player you want in the team. There's another few mentions. I thought of Ben Pearson, which is a bit of a weird one, but He's sort of a no nonsense player, sort of Brexit footballer. Loves the yellow card, but no, I'm going to go with Gary Cahill because I think he's someone you need in the team just for the dressing room, really, just to be with the young players and to boost that team morale. So yeah, going with Gary Cahill.
So already that defence is looking really different to what we first had. My wild card, I can't not do it. I'm going to stick Billy Sharp in there instead of Solanke. Just, I can't leave him out. I can't wear this shirt and not put him in the team somehow. I've got to try and wangle it. But I just do think that if there was a Mount Rushmore of English football players that never quite hit it big in the Premier League, so Championship EFL type of player, Billy Sharp would be on there. Along with a few. Lee Trundle will be next to him, I think. So I just can't not have him in the team. Anybody who thinks that they can do better, get down in the comments. Let us know your Championship 11. Let us know which team you prefer, the wildcard team or the original team. But before we go, we've still got one spot left. And that is for who's going to manage this team of likely lads, let's call them. It's got to be an English manager and he's got to be from the Championship. So we can't go out there and pick Sven-Goran Eriksson as much as we'd all like to. I'm sure we would. We'll start with Des, because I reckon Des is going to be interested on this one.
I'm not happy about this English manager thing. You don't have to be English to manage England. Like you say with Sven-Goran Eriksson. The manager for me would have to be Steve Cooper. I know what you said, but it's not just because of what he's done at Forest this season. Lots of the players we spoke about today have played under Steve Cooper in the under-17s, and he's coached them. He's got massive respect in the game. What we're hearing at Forest is all the Premiership managers want to send their players to Steve Cooper.
Yeah.
Because he makes them better. We've mentioned Jed Spence, Joe Worrell, just making them better players. Forest did assign Jed Spence for 50 grand if we'd have offered it, but now he's worth 15 million. And I think that when it comes to England managers, I always think you need a man manager more than anything.
Yeah.
Because these players have got real talent, real ability. There's not that much different, fine margins almost, as some managers coin it. But Cooper just gets that little bit more out of the personality, and I think they're able to express themselves. And you've seen from where Forest have come from this season, how far they've gone. Like I said, he's worked with a lot of these young players. They've had a good degree of success. He's managed at Liverpool. And he is Welsh, so he's nearly English anyway. So I'm really fighting the corner. What I would say, if I've really got to go for an English manager, before Cooper came to Forest, the talk was a Chris Wilder. Seems like the obvious one. And again, on that sort of management thing, there's a bit of the Mike Bassett's about Wilder. Whilst he's quite advanced in his thinking and what he did at Sheffield United was quite spectacular, where he took them from 1-2, and the way he changed the whole team, there's obviously some real talent in there. But again, he's got that streak in him, and I think sometimes they just need motivating more than actually coaching. Yeah. And I think if I've got to go for an English one, it'll be Wilder. But I'm really fighting my corner for Stevie Cooper.
Well, I tell you what, we'll have Steve Cooper as assistant manager. I think that could work.
He's too good for that.
I'm obviously going to go for Chris Wilder, not just because he used to be Sheffield United manager. Just if you look at his track record, doing brilliantly with Borough at the moment. Won leagues at non-league level, won League 2 with Northampton, finishing just shy of 100 points. Won League 1 with Sheffield United with over 100 points. Championship, promoted in second, and then to finish in the top 10 of the Premier League. I don't think there's many other managers in that division that can have that kind of CV and still not be at a top level job. A lot of people see Borough as a top level job, but whether they're in the Championship, it is where it is. He's fighting in a lower division. But as you've said, the fact that he's a great motivator of players is no nonsense, and there is that Mike Bassett side to him, which I think is needed with a lot of players. A lot of players need a nug, a lot of players need to kick up the arse, and he knows which one to do. Alex, is it going to be 3 for 3, or are you going to pull something out of the woodwork?
It is. Chris Wilder, everything you two have said there, spot on. What he did with Sheffield United is the main reason I picked him, really. just turned that team around, brought them to the Championship. Now he finds himself at Borough. He's doing well, could get into the playoffs, could even get him promoted. So I can't argue with Chris Wilder. But there's a few managers in the Championship, really. Nathan Jones, I thought of, but he's not English. And like Des mentioned, Steve Cooper. Steve Cooper, actually, he was in the England setup and obviously worked with a lot of English players. So it'd be a good shout. But
some very good Welsh managers about it, isn't there, to be honest?
Yeah, there is, yeah. I was surprised, actually. I thought Nathan Jones were English, but no, he's not. So yeah, Chris Wilder. I think it's the obvious choice, but it's the one you got to go with.
Yeah. So that concludes our England setup. We've got our A team and our wildcard team. We've got the manager. Well, I'm sure the editor guy will put them on screen. If not, editor guy, come on, put them on screen. There. Put them somewhere. Des, Alex, thank you for coming on. Thank you for having this bizarre chat with me. And we'll leave it to people who watch the video now. We'll leave it to social media because I'm sure we're going to cause a lot of arguments. But that's what football's all about, isn't it, lads?
Yes.
Right. Thank you for coming on, Alex. It's been a pleasure. Des, good luck with the playoffs.
Cheers.
Alex, are you staying up before you go?
Do you know what? I was on the radio the other day and I said no. After the Bristol City game the other week, I said yeah. I said definitely staying up, 8 out of 10 on the relegation scale. But I can't see it happening now. We've got to beat Reading next week. If we beat them, the Great Escape's on. If we don't, I'm afraid it's relegation.
Des, not only are you getting into the playoffs, are you winning the playoffs?
Well, absolutely. We're on a roll now. Take confidence from the cup one, beating these big teams and falling just short against Liverpool. Steve Cooper for the next England manager.
One thing I will say is you coming out of the cup has been a nightmare for the rest of us. We wanted you to get to the final so you'd be too leggy for the playoffs. You coming out of the cup.
The semi-finals are on the Easter weekend and it would have we've already got Fulham and Bournemouth rescheduled for the last week of the season and we'd have had 2 more games, Luton and West Brom, another 2 tough games. We wouldn't have just we'd have been like Rotherham last season playing 4 games in a day.
Yeah. So you coming out of the cup's been a nightmare for the rest of us in that top 6. So thanks, Liverpool. Cheers for that. Lads, it's been brilliant. Thank you for coming on.
Cheers.
Cheers.